What's up YouTube, and welcome to another tutorial. Now today it's not so much as a draw along with me, we're going to be editing this photo of this subject and we're going to turn it into this, where we end up with a stone marble effect with some exposed rock that's shiny under the surface and all these crevices and grooves on the skin. Now you can use your own photo if you'd like. I do recommend that you follow along with the subject image first so you can get an idea for the process, and then you can apply it to your own photos. Now there's a couple of things to bear in mind if you are going to use your own photo. You're going to want to use something that's got strong shadows and strong highlights. Now you're going to want to potentially use something as well with a single light source. So you've got a light source that comes across here, casts a lighted side and a dark side. We need highlights and shadows for this effect to come off nicely. Now there is a link in the description down below to the source image here that I'm using, as well as the palette, so you can follow along the exact same colors and the brushes that I use in this tutorial. Now if you're new here, I post Procreate content every single week, so hit that subscribe button down below. And if you want even more tutorials from me, I'll throw up the latest 3 that I've been posting over on my Patreon. Patrons get access to even more tutorials exclusive to Patreon supporters, as well as early access to YouTube videos, sneak peeks of upcoming designs, extra benefits on my Discord server and merch. I'll leave the link to that in the description down below. And if you're interested in any of the equipment I'm using, the Sketchboard Pro, the Paperlike screen cover and the pen tips, grip and glove, there's links to everything in the description down below. And make sure to use code JOELCREATE for 10% off of your Sketchboard Pro. And with all that said, let's get started. So the first thing you're going to want to do is go up to the plus icon and let's create a new canvas, and we're going to make it 2000 by 2000. So you can click on this icon here and then you can type in the dimensions that you want. So we're going to go for 2000 by 2000 and then we're going to hit create. That'll take us through to our canvas. So what we're going to do is once we've got our canvas, we're going to want to insert the image for our subject. So we're going to go up to the wrench icon in the top left hand corner, and then you're going to get your actions, and we're going to want to insert a photo. So you're going to go to add and insert photo. If we tap on that, you'll end up with your gallery and you can find the image that you're going to need. So I've got this image here, so I'm going to tap on that and then it will drop the image onto the screen. Now what we're going to do is we're just going to zoom out of our canvas because we want to fill up the whole thing. So I'm going to move the subject to the top right hand corner there, and I'm going to just extend the image until I hit both sides of the canvas, and then you can pick and choose how high or low you want it. But I think something like that looks pretty good. We've got a little bit of his hands in there as well. And then tap on your cursor when you're done. Now my image is already black and white. Just a very quick hint, if you are using an image that's in color, at this point you would go to your adjustments, hue, saturation and brightness, and this saturation slider here, you drag it all the way to the bottom, which would get rid of all the color, and then you'd end up with a black and white photo, and then we can all proceed at the same point. So just do that if you're going to use a color photo. Now what we're going to do is we're going to cut around our subject so that we can apply the effect directly to it. So we're going to go to our layers. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to go to our background color, and we're going to pick any color nice and bright that you'll be able to see through the erasing lines that we're going to create. So I'm just going to grab red and drag it into the top right there, make it nice and bright, and hit done. And then what we're going to do is we're going to tap on the image that we've entered. We're going to tap on mask, and that will add a mask to the image. Now a mask allows you to show and hide part of an image, and if it's white it's going to show, and if it's black it will hide. So you can use it as an eraser, but it's also an unforgiving eraser because you can then color it back in with white and reveal things again. So on the mask, making sure we're on it, we've got black selected in the top right hand corner. We're going to go to our brushes, we're going to go to calligraphy, and we're going to use the monoline brush. Now for this then you want to tap away, and you're going to want to take a look at what you need to cut out background wise. We just want to be left with our subject. Now I'm going to zoom in, and all I want to do is start outlining around his fingers here like so, and then I'm going to go all the way up the side of his face, and you're just going to want to create a nice little cut, just drawing in those lines like so. It doesn't have to be in one movement there, and then we're just going to go round the face. I'm not going to skip ahead, I'm just going to go round. And then once we get to the top of his face here, so if we go round his eyebrow here, then I'm going to just get rid of a little bit of those loose hairs on the outside. I'm not interested in holding on to that information. And then now what we've done is we've created a line that goes from the edge of the screen to the edge of the screen, meaning that's now completely cut off, meaning I can drag the black into there and it will get rid of all that space. Now with that said, we can zoom out. Is there anything else we need to get rid of from this particular image? There isn't anything else, but if there was in your image, you may have to, for example, maybe cut out a little section there and then drag and drop your color in if required. but for my image, that's looking good to me. Now the red was only temporary. We're only going to use that just so we could see the difference between the skin and the background. So we're going to go back to our layers. We're going to go to our background color, and we're going to double tap at the bottom here to select black, and then that will continue with that black and white aesthetic. So now we've removed the background and get onto some of the fun bits. So first of all, let's pinch the mask to the actual subject. So all you do is simply pinch the two together, and that will permanently erase what you masked out. Now we're going to create a new layer, and this is where we're going to create the marble design. So on this layer, we're going to go to our colors, and you can see the collection of colors that I've added in here. Now what we're going to do is we're going to double tap in the top left hand corner to select white of our disk, and then we're going to drag that into the layer. That will fill that in white, and then we're going to go to our colors. We're going to grab the blue color, and we're going to use this as sort of an accent color. So we're going to go to our brush library, and under airbrushing we're going to use a soft brush, and we're just going to sort of paint in some little bits of blue, little whirls in there, and then little bits like this. Now we want to sort of leave quite a bit of white because it's meant to be a stone design, but something like that looks pretty good to me. And let's just add a tiny bit up there. And then we're going to switch and start to go through our colors. So we're going to take a look at our color palette, and we've got these other three colors we can drop some tones into. So we're going to reduce our brush size down even more, maybe about 5%, and just drop in some color here and there. So a little bit here, a little bit here. And I'm just going to be very sporadic with it, but not focus too much time on where they're dropping. I will then switch to the third color in the palette, which is this sort of pink tone. So just the third one across on this row, and just drop some pink tones in here. And I'm bearing in mind that I know my face is roughly here of my subject, so I just want to bear that in mind where my positioning is. We can put some other colors in the other side as well, down in the corners. And then we're going to switch our color out to the final color, the fourth one on that row, which is the gold color. I'm just going to drop some gold tones in here. Now we can maybe put them right next to another color, something like that, and then just position them where we need them. And something like that looks pretty good. We don't want to add too much color. We can always add more if we want to. So we're going to go to our layer now, and we're actually going to reduce the opacity down of that layer to about 50%. Now what that will do is that will allow us to see our subject through the design that we've just been creating. And we can start to now get an idea where our colors are. We've got a nice little bit down here on the chin and the jaw, under the eye, but there's not much color here. So maybe I could do with adding a little bit of color. Now I've got lots of gold in here. Maybe if I switch my color to say the pink, I can just start to brush in a little bit of color on the cheek there. That will look really good later on. And then maybe sort of brush in some pink across the top of the eye there. Let's then also take a look at our colors, and maybe we can switch it back to blue. Maybe a little bit of color here on the lips would look pretty good. A little bit down here on the jaw, a bit more down here too. And then what we're going to end up achieving is we've got a nice little sort of layout of colors. We're now going to add in the liquify effect and start to move it all around. So we're going to go to our adjustments. We're going to go to liquify, and we're going to use the option down here of twirl right. And you can see sort of my different sort of settings here. I'm going to increase my brush size up a bit bigger, mind, to get started, about 60%. And then all we're going to do is work from left to right, just brushing our pen, putting a little bit of pressure down, and just start to distort all those lines. And that's what we want to try and do, create some lovely little twirls in there, a little bit of movement, and just move those lines around our subject. Now that looks pretty good to me already, but if you want to make any more adjustments, more specific adjustments, you can go down here to your liquify mode, and you can use the option of push. Now push will allow you to literally make an adjustment and move things out of the way. Now down here on the fingers is a great example. We don't want this purple running across from the face onto the fingers because it wouldn't do that. The fingers are in front of our subject. So what we're going to do is we're going to reduce our brush size down and just start to push that purple, specifically just that, up and away from the fingers. Now that runs across the chin and underneath that lip. But we can leave the gold here so it stays just on the fingers. Maybe here, this finger just needs to have the pink only on it because it wouldn't run from finger to finger. That looks pretty good to me. Maybe a little adjustment here as well. Zooming out, you may want to introduce some colors from the side. So maybe you want to push this little bit of pink up and into the brow a little bit more. Something like that. And then maybe you'll want to add in a little bit more gold. So just moving this line up and onto the face a little bit more. And you can always bring the colors in from the sides should you want to. But I'm pretty happy with that layout. Maybe we just move this down a little bit more, just down onto the design. And then when you're happy, you go back to your layer and you're going to want to increase the opacity by tapping on the end back up to 100%. You're then going to want to scroll your layer options all the way up to multiply, which will then allow you to add the color to the design, but also see the details through it. Then what we're going to do is we're going to go to our layers again, and on this layer that we just created, we're going to swipe it to the left and duplicate it one more time. That will really allow us to get a lot more color of our design in. And then we're going to use that as a guide to add in some of our little glitter lines. Now for the glitter lines, you're going to need the brush that's in the description down below. And once you've got it, you're going to go to your brush library. It should be at the very bottom under imported. And we've got a little glitter brush here. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go to our layers. We're going to create a new layer. And we're going to tap on that layer option here. And we're going to change it to screen. Now what that will allow us to do is we're now going to add in some really cool glittery highlights on these little bits of color, which just add a little bit of the lighting. So we've got a lighting source coming from the top here. It's just going to hit that edge of all the little bits of color. So we're going to go to our colors. Now you'll notice there isn't an additional color for the blue. That's on purpose. The blue is just meant to be sort of a tone for the stone effect in the background. So we've got 3 colors here for the extra little bit. So we've got a little bit of purple. I'm going to tap on that first, and I'm going to take a look at where the purple's hitting and where the light source is. So a good example is up here. And then my brush size is set to, let's go to about 5%. And then we're going to just sort of add in a little highlight of that color on the top there, just on that top line, a little bit like so. Maybe a tiny bit here as well. But with this brush, it's really nice that you can add a tiny bit of detail and not too much. But the harder you press, the more color you'll add. Taking a look, maybe we would add a little bit of a highlight underneath here where the lighting is coming down. And I'm just going to push that out from side to side and just let that fade out and run out. Taking a look at the rest of the design, I can't really see many spaces here to add much purple. So I'm now going to go to my colors. I'm going to grab the pink. And then I'm going to add in some nicer tones on top of here. So just a little bit on the top of the head here. This would get a lot of light in, so you can maybe make this one a little bit thicker. This bit here on the cheeks, most definitely going to get some as well. So a little bit across the top there. And you can, if you want to, press very lightly and just bring it down a little bit if you want to thicken the line out. Taking a look, we've got a nice little bit of pink here on the cheek, which is going to look like a really nice, strong sort of visual pointer right in the middle of the face. Zooming out. Now this is a great example down here. You don't want to add any here because it's in a shadowed area. So we want to leave that be. Potentially we would add a little bit of on here, but looking at the colors and where they're positioned, I think we're pretty good to leave it as is. Now just here, you can see there's a bit of pink. Maybe we could get away with adding a tiny little bit just on there, just a couple of sort of little twinkles there on the side, like a really thin line. Now the gold's pretty prominent in my design, so I'm going to go to my colors. I'm going to grab the 3rd color on that bottom row, and then we're going to start adding in some gold. So just a little bit under here, nice little thin line that can maybe run down here a little bit, pressing very, very lightly to add in a very thin amount there. I'm then going to take a look. We've got a nice little bit of gold here too. It just runs into a shadow, so we bear that in mind and we don't touch it once it runs into the shadow. We've got a little bit here that we can maybe just add a little bit of gold too. And then we've got the finger here, which we can maybe add a nice little bit of gold on. There's a little bit here on the chin of our subject. Just run that out under there. And zooming out, that's already come together quite nicely. We've got loads of nice little colors in there. Now, if you're happy with your amount of sort of little extra little details in there, little shiny parts, you can then go to your layers. We're going to swipe the layer to the left and duplicate it. Now, make it really bright for a minute. But what we're going to do is we're going to tap on the layer. We're going to tap on it one more time. We're going to go to alpha lock. So I've tapped on the bottom one and alpha locked it. And then I'm going to go to my colors. I'm going to double tap at the bottom to select black. I'm going to go back to my layer. I'm going to tap on it and I'm going to use the option of fill. Now that will give us a black version of the layer that we were just working with. Now we can go to the S and we're going to change the S to overlay. We're then going to grab our cursor in the top here and we're going to move the entire little bit of glitter up to the left hand side. Now what we're moving this time is the shadow. So what we do is by moving it up, we create a crevice and then the light source shines in there. So you create like this nice little groove in the skin, which gives a nice 3D look to it. So all I did there was I just moved that slightly up to the left hand side so that our light source is coming from here. So it should go light source coming down, shadow line, and then your nice little twinkle line in there as well. Then tap on your cursor when you're done. Now the next step while we're here is to add in some nice stone effect. So we're going to go to our layers. We're going to go to the top of our layers. We're actually at this point going to clip all the layers to our subject. So we're going to tap on our first one down here, the colors. We're going to clipping mask it, tap on the one above, clipping mask it, and then do that for all of the layers until we get to the top. Then when we create a new layer, we're going to tap on that and also clipping mask it. Then we're going to go to our colors. We're going to double tap in the top left hand corner to select white. We're then going to go to our brush library. We're then going to go to our organic section here at the bottom, and we're going to use this mountain ash. Now my brush size is set to about 10%. Now what we're going to use with this one for is it's going to be again a similar effect where we're going to create some light grooves and then we're going to create a shadowed set of grooves. Now we only really want to add it in the lighter areas. We don't want to be adding anything down here because the no light would hit that. It's too far in the shadow area. So I'm going to reduce my brush size a bit smaller just for accuracy. And I'm just going to start very lightly just brushing in the lighter areas some highlights. Now don't worry if you add some in a sort of shadowed area, you can always get rid of it afterwards, but we're just going to start adding in some nice grooves in here. And again, don't worry if it runs onto the skin here, that's also fine because we can just run that down here too onto here, because these are also going to get that nice little chipped look to it, that nice marble look. That looks good to me. Then I'm going to add some here. Over the lips looks pretty good as well, and then likewise here on the cheek. This is going to get a nice little amount of line work. Now a good example here is I've just run onto the eye there. So I could at this point just go to my eraser, tap on it and use the option under airbrushing of soft brush. Now it'll just give us a nice feathered edge so that in a circular motion we could just get rid of that and get rid of that there too. And I'm going to go back to my brush. Let's then add some on the nose like so, and then likewise over the top of the head, on the forehead even. Just push that down, creating some nice line work in there. Now I might add in some slightly heavier pressured areas with the pen just to really emphasize some of those deeper grooves. You can press quite firmly, but you just don't want to add too much. Maybe a nice big one here that comes down the eye. That looks quite nice. A little bit out here too. You could get a little bit there. And you can sort of see everywhere I've added mine in. You kind of want to reflect that in your design as well. And then a little bit more here. That looks good to me. And then in certain areas I'm going to grab my eraser again and maybe just increase my brush size. Just very lightly, just feather them out so they just run out into the shadows. That's fine with me. And now we've got our effect, what we're going to do is we're going to go to our layers. And because we were working with white, we can simply swipe the layer to the left and duplicate it. The bottom one out the two, we can tap on it and use the option of invert. Now that will make all your lines go a bit dark for a minute. And then exactly the same, we're going to grab our cursor. We're going to zoom out so we can just move our lines upwards in this direction, just exactly the same as we did before. So by doing that, just a pixel or two, you can, if you want to, sort of tap in the top left hand corner and that'll move it a pixel every time. You'll end up creating, if I tap on my cursor, a shadow against your crevice on the skin. Now that will really bring that sort of stone effect to life a lot more, and you can get an idea for all the different grooves and the cracks in this work over time. The next effect that we're going to do, and we're coming towards the end, we're going to go to our layers. We're going to grab our subject again and we're going to swipe it to the left hand side and duplicate it. I'm going to grab the bottom one and drag it all the way to the top. It will clip automatically if it doesn't tap on it and clip. We're going to want to swipe that to the left and duplicate it one more time. The top one, we're going to turn that off for a moment with the little checkbox here. And then the bottom one, we're going to tap on the layer option. We're going to scroll all the way down until we get to linear light. Now that's going to make your lines go really bright. And then we're going to lower that opacity down to about 13%. Now that works great for my design and my subject, but you'll need to sort of vary that with your design. And if I quickly just turn that on and off, you can see it emphasizes some of the shadows and emphasizes some of the highlights. Now you want to bear that in mind with your design as well and the image that you select. Now the top one out of the two, we're going to turn that back on. And now what we want to do is, before we apply any layer effects, we're going to go to our adjustments. We are going to go to curves. And all we're going to do is we're going to bring this line here, this little node in the top right hand corner of this graph, tap on it and drag it to the left hand side. What that will do is that will really emphasize a lot more of the highlights, and you can, if you want to, bring in the shadows as well. Now we do want to end up with a slightly lighter image than what we started with. So I'm bringing that across, emphasizing those highlights, and you can see sort of roughly where I'm leaving my node there. This all works very well when you've got a really strong amount of shadows and highlights. Now I'm happy with that. You can see where I've left my points. Tap on your adjustments when you're done. Go to your layers, tap on the layer, and we want to change that layer option to overlay. Scroll down to overlay, and we're going to again lower that down all the way down to roughly around about sort of 10 or 15%, somewhere in there. And then if I go back to the design, pinch with 2 fingers and go full screen with 4, you end up with today's finished product. So let me know how you got on. Be sure to tag me on Instagram in your variations of this design. There's links to all my socials in the description down below. And if you're new here, I post Procreate content every single week. So hit that subscribe button down below. And a massive shout out to all my patrons. I'll throw their names up on the screen now. If you want to join my Patreon, there's a link in the description down below where you can get access to even more tutorials every single month, as well as extra benefits on my Discord server, sneak peeks of upcoming designs, and exclusive merch. And if you're interested in any of the equipment I'm using, the Sketchboard Pro, the Paperlike screen cover, or the pen tips, grip and glove, there's links to all my equipment in the description down below. And you can also use code JOELCREATE for 10% off of your Sketchboard Pro. And with all that said, I'll see you in the next one.